So BDS is taking different shapes in various places. Academic boycott in some places, cultural. I haven't talked about cultural. I can talk about it in a moment. Boycott of companies, or divesting from companies that are involved in the Israeli occupation and oppression. Boycott of Israeli products. Various forms of boycott. Boycott of Motorola, companies that are supporting Israel, supporting the Israeli army with telecommunications equipment and so on. This is big, especially in the US. There's a huge campaign to boycott Motorola called Hang Up on Motorola. So it takes various shapes. The cultural boycott, and I'll end with that, was a very important component. We went into a head-on collision with the Israeli state in 2008 when Israel was celebrating its 60th anniversary, which was the 60th anniversary of the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians in 1948. So the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic Cultural Boycott, PACB, called on artists and writers and intellectuals and so on to boycott the Israeli festivities because they would be dancing on Palestinian blood, basically. Many artists, some of the biggest names, heeded our calls, many of them silently, in other words, without announcing that they're supporting the boycott. They just did not come, using various excuses. Some of those are like Bono, Snoop Dogg, Bjork, some of the biggest names in the arts world. Some writers like Russell Banks from the US, some filmmakers like Jean-Luc Godard from France. So we've had really big names, Serrat from Spain. We've had really big names who refused to come to Israel to celebrate. So we've had quite a few successes in the cultural scene as well.
One last issue on the boycott. As you know, the arms trade with India has been growing, Israel's arms trade with India. So what would your committee suggest that the Indian people do on this?
Actually, we're extremely disappointed with skyrocketing bonds between Israel and India. We cannot understand the logic behind this except pure capitalist meeting of interests at the expense of all principles that India had stood for decades. India was a leader in the non-aligned movement, and now it's totally biased, completely biased to Israel. It has really betrayed its history as a country that has been at the forefront of the non-aligned movement and at the forefront of defending the rights of the oppressed all over the world, especially in Palestine.
Including sanctions on South Africa during apartheid period.
Exactly.
And no relations, diplomatic relations with Israel till 1991.
Yes.
In fact, India did not even have sporting relations with Israel till that point of time.
Yes. So
from that, this is really a huge.
Yeah. From that to India becoming the biggest importer of Israeli weapons, it's a real betrayal, true betrayal of Indian principles. We feel, and we think this nothing hurts the Palestinians as much as this. I mean, this is a stab in the back of the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian people. India has totally betrayed us. That's how we feel. The Indian state, the Indian establishment has completely betrayed us.
Omar, I would also like you to tell our viewers that, for instance, when India buys arms from Israel, that it is not just buying arms, it's also in some sense helping directly to finance the occupation.
I mean, that's the most direct complicity in maintaining the occupation and oppression. The most direct, the most effective form of complicity is buying Israeli weapons, because you're maintaining the most dangerous part of the Israeli economy, the weapons industry. The military-industrial complex in Israel is entirely built upon the military weapons industry, and India is the biggest subsidizer of this industry. So when Indian people demonstrate in Delhi against the Israeli massacre in Gaza, the genocidal acts in Gaza, India is part of that massacre. India is a partner in that massacre by subsidizing the Israeli military industry. It's not a third party. It's not a neutral party. India has become totally, completely complicit. If we go to Nuremberg principles, India can be held criminally responsible for its complicity in Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people. But we're too weak at this point to push for a Nuremberg trial, to put all those states, all those governments that are complicit in Israeli crimes on trial. But we hope one day Indian Prime Minister, as well as Bush, Blair and others, will stand behind bars in The Hague to face criminal charges for complicity.
When you come to the Indian buying of arms, that's one part of it. The other part of it is joint research and development, for instance, for space technology, for developing drones, some joint research and development programs for missiles and so on. A lot of it which is actually used in attacks in either Gaza or in Lebanon.
Absolutely, absolutely. And India is not a country that's lacking in technological resources or human power. I mean, India is a leading country now in high tech, in software, in many different technological areas. So it's not a country that begs for Israeli help, as the Rafael video clip has shown, that India is this poor woman begging for this macho Israeli image that can bring it out of its misery and help its security and make it safe. It's so insulting to the Indian continent, not country, to accept this image of little Israel protecting this India, which is so weak and vulnerable.
The last point, what do you think the Indian people should do in this? What is your message for the Indian people?
Boycott, divestment and sanctions in various ways, from the academic boycott, stopping all research institutional links with Israeli universities, and especially the military ban. India should stop selling weapons to Israel and should stop buying weapons from Israel. This is the biggest contribution India can make to peace and justice in our region.
Thank you, Omar. I think you have really covered a whole range of issues, and I hope that your message to the Indian people will also help us in bringing up the boycott, divestment sanctions.
I must end on that note that despite my strong accusations against the Indian establishment and government, we do have faith in the Indian people. We've seen what Indians have done in the last 60 years. They've stood up for rights, especially in South Africa, but not just in South Africa. India was always considered this almost fatherly figure in the non-aligned movement that always helped the oppressed. We count on the Indian people to turn to that history and to respect those principles that India has always stood for, and to get rid of this neoliberal atmosphere that sees Israel as just another normal country.